Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Chicken Box. It's Thursday afternoon, and we are so happy to have you with us. I am flying solo today as your host, Francis Tony Draper, publisher of the 129-year-old in a couple of weeks Afro American newspapers, and we are so happy that you've joined us today. Our co-host Kevin is on the road, as well as our other co-host Misha Green. And so this is an intergenerational show, as you know, but I'm holding it down today for the boomers. Usually we have our millennial friend on as well as our Gen Xer, but they'll see it a little bit later, but we're glad that you're here. It's about noon on the East Coast, so wherever you are, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, grab something to drink. We call it the Chicken Box, a place where you can get on the box and tell your truth. And we know if you're from Baltimore, a chicken box is 4 wings and fries. We're excited today. All month long, we've been talking about Blacks in sports. And today, the Afro has produced a beautiful special edition called Changing the Game. And we are privileged today, on this afternoon, to have 4 of the writers for that edition on the Chicken Box. They're going to talk about the stories that they've written. They're going to tell us a little bit about themselves. Everything that's in the edition, you're going to have to get that for yourself. And a little later on, I'll tell you how you can do that. And so I'm going to ask our producer to bring them on screen. If you have a comment or a question, please feel free to put it in the chat. Hey, Byron Deese, I see you there. I see some others. Come on and share this. We're having a great conversation today. And so I see Alexis is on and Ralph is on. And let's see, there's Wanda. And I think we have one other guest, Demetrius. Hey, how y'all doing today?
Doing okay.
Welcome to the Chicken Box, a place where you can tell your truth. And so the first thing I think that we'll do is ask you to introduce yourselves. No particular order. I'm going to call you out as I see you on my screen. And so it'll be Alexis, Ralph, and then Wanda, and then Demetrius. I'll ask you. So right now, just give us a real quick introduction of who you are. All right, Alexis.
Good afternoon. My name is Alexis Taylor. I have been a journalist for the Afro off and on since about June 2011. I cover a range of topics, anything having to do with community or health. That is my bag. I love community stories. I love health stories. And so right now my focus is the Word in Black, covering all things dealing with education and COVID and how it has affected what teachers and students are going through.
Well, thank you, Alexis. All right, Ralph.
Hi, my name is Ralph Moore. I'm a native Baltimorean. I've been working with the Afro as a freelance writer for about a year now, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I've had the opportunity to write a few sports stories. More recently, I wrote a story about a Negro League ball player from Havre de Grace who just had a statue erected in a park up there in his honor. A little-known Marylander who played Negro League ball and distinguished himself. So I tend to love sports history more than I love sports in some ways. There's a lot of interesting things that happened that have affected society. So anyway.
Well, welcome, Ralph. We're going to come back and hear more about what you wrote about in this week's edition. So welcome. We're glad to have you with us today. Wanda, just give us a quick introduction of yourself, please.
Actually,
okay, go ahead. We can hear you now.
Okay. My name is Wanda Boulware. I'm actually, I guess, a freelance writer for the Afro. I used to write articles a couple of years ago, and my mother started talking to me about one of my favorite subjects, which is sneakers. And that's what I added to the special edition today.
Okay, we'll come back and find out about what you wrote about sneakers in just a minute. Demetrius, just introduce yourself to us, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Demetrius Dillard, a freelance writer based here in Baltimore, Maryland. I contribute for a few newspapers, but I'm also a sports enthusiast. I love basketball, boxing, baseball, football, you name it. So I'm glad to be here today. Thank you for having me.
We are glad to have you today. Look, we might be having an intergenerational conversation in anyway. So let me ask our four writers, journalists, guests today. Any millennials in the group?
I guess
Okay.
I'm.
You guess. Well, let me start with the younger generation. Any Gen Zers in the group? Okay, so we got a couple of millennials. How about a Gen Xer? Any Gen Xers?
I believe that
All
would
right.
be me.
All right. Well, Kevin would say if he was here, he'd say, "Hold up the banner, Wanda, for the Gen Xer." You know, he's really passionate about your generation. And Ralph Moore, I already know you with me.
Right.
Yeah, right. So we have our intergenerational show anyway. So this is wonderful. Let me give this plug, and then we're gonna get right into the conversation. And so we being the Afro, we've been doing these "We're Still Here" editions now all year long. And so we've been focusing on one topic a month and then dedicating the entire edition to it. If you are a subscriber to the Afro already, you know that you're going to get either your electronic copy or your print, and some of you do both, and so great. But I have an offer for you today. You may not yet be a subscriber. We're calling our subscribers now members. Sounds a little bit more friendly, right? You're members of the Afro. You can go to afro.com. Wanda is sitting by waiting for your call. Here's the offer just for today. Come on, don't spread this and say, I heard the publishers say that y'all can get it tomorrow. This is not a tomorrow deal. This is a today deal. If you call today and you want this special edition, and all you want is a special edition, it's a $5 cost. We'll be glad to mail it to you. But if you call today and you become a member, which is $100 a year for 52 editions, I'm going to throw in the special edition and we'll absorb the mailing cost, because it takes a couple of weeks to get your subscription started. We will mail you a special copy for as long as they last. I'll offer that again later. But again, welcome to the Chicken Box. I am ready. You all ready to jump into the discussion? And so we're going to go in the reverse order. Demetrius, I'm going to ask you first. You did a story in the special edition called "We're Still Here, Changing the Game." Every single page is on sports, and you wrote about the Harlem Globetrotters. Tell us a little bit about what you wrote, how you went about it, what you found out, what you think might excite us. Don't tell us the whole story though, because then folk may not become a member. Welcome to the Chicken Box. Okay, Demetrius.
Okay, well, I'll try to keep it as concise as possible, but the Harlem Globetrotters story was an interesting story. I learned quite a bit that I didn't know beforehand. The Globetrotters have nearly a century history. They've been around since 1926, and they were really the first team that was assembled to take the game of basketball global. They've played in, I believe, more than 120 countries, and they are widely considered as like the greatest, really the most entertaining sports team really ever assembled. And the subject matter of the story I wrote was the Globetrotters penned a letter to the National Basketball Association, pretty much requesting a franchise. There would be, as many know, basketball fans know, the Harlem Globetrotters predated the NBA. When the NBA first started in the late 1940s, it was mostly white players, and they would scrimmage against various Globetrotter teams, which were all black players. And the first black players to play in the NBA were actually from the Globetrotters. And I was told that they were promised a franchise in the league many years ago, around that time, in the early 50s, late 1940s, but they were never promised one. And, now basically what the letter is saying is, and this is about, they wrote it, I think, in late June, and basically it's saying there would be no NBA without the Globetrotters. And so it's saying, it's just the ethical thing to do is to give us a franchise. The NBA commissioner has already discussed the NBA expanding to a lesser extent last summer, but for the Globetrotters to join the NBA would have to do an expansion. So this it's a possibility, but we'll see how it goes. But that was a very interesting story. I got some insight from a former Globetrotter player named David Naves. He's originally from Chicago, but he lives in Bowie, so it's kind of like a local connection or what have you. But it was very informative. I learned a lot, and I really enjoyed that story.
Well, thank you. I really enjoyed reading it too. So thank you, Demetrius. You told us a lot about the Globetrotters. Some of us have seen the Globetrotters, I'm sure, and very, very entertaining. I think I read someplace they've played over 25,000 games. Right, they've been around since the 1920s, before any of us were born. And so, Demetrius, thank you. I'm gonna come back and ask you a little bit more about equity in sports. Just a minute. Let me say good afternoon to Tony Boulware Stackhouse. Good afternoon to Diane, to Chippy. Good afternoon to our managing editor, Dorothy Boulware, Byron, and others who are joining. Please put your questions in the chat. If you're just joining us, this is the Chicken Box, where you can speak your truth. Wanda,
Yes.
tell us a little bit. You mentioned it in your opening. Wanda wrote about the sneaker culture. I'm going to challenge our audience. How many pair of sneakers do you have? Or if you are not a sneaker wearer, have you bought for a young person in your household? Just throw the number in the chat. Have you bought, maybe let's do it this way, per person. Have you bought 2 pair per person? 10 pairs of sneakers per person? Are you the kind of person that gets a new pair of sneakers every time Michael said, they're out? Were you the one who got the lottery ticket to go into a local establishment? I was going to call the name of a store, but they don't get any free. I might give them no free marketing publicity on today. But were you in the store to get that latest Air Jordan? Wanda, come on, what did you find out? Come on, put it in the chat, and we'll put it up on the screen. Okay, Wanda, tell us about the sneaker culture.
So I am an avid sneaker freak, or sneakerhead is what they call them. And
a sneakerhead, okay.
Yeah, and I have, several communities of people who talk about sneakers, show their sneakers, like discuss just the latest sneakers and stuff like that. It's a large community. It spans, there's no specific. It spans genre. We have like all kinds of any age group, any color, any like race, whatever. Like, it's a culture that nobody really understands just how large it is and how massive it is and how dedicated people are to their collections. And yes, people do wait online for days. They do spend large amounts of money on their sneakers. Hopefully they are, covering their bills and putting something in savings first, but they are very passionate about their sneakers. And one of the controversies about the sneaker game is just how much it's changed and how it used to be a lot easier to get sneakers. It used to be a lot, even though you stood online and you waited, you were able to get them. But now it's more like, you have to beat out people who are buying sneakers to sell sneakers. So there's not just a selling game, but there's a resale game out there. And that's how it's changed a lot. And so, that has driven up the prices and made it a little bit more complicated, but people still dedicate so much of their time to the hunt for the sneaker and the latest Jordan and the latest Yeezy. And, it hasn't deterred anybody from, being a part of the culture.
So what's your favorite sneaker one?
I love Nike. I'm a huge Nike fan. I'm not necessarily a Jordan fan, but I do like Jordans, but I have a large collection of Nikes myself.
Okay, what's large? Let me help me understand what's large. I got 2 pair of sneakers, so sorry about that, but go ahead.
I guess in the grand scheme of things, my sneaker collection is pretty tiny because I have images in my Facebook groups where people literally have thousands of sneakers. So I don't, spend that much money, but in my collection, I'm at probably about 40 pair at this point. But I spend a lot of time on websites looking at sneakers, trying to figure out what's going to be my next purchase, how I can sort of budget it, because, I am a single mother who's taking care of 2 kids, so I have to keep everything in perspective. But it is a true passion of mine. I watch videos, I watch YouTube, I watch again Facebook and all kinds of things, checking out sneakers. So even if I don't buy them, I love to look at them.
Okay, well, we're going to come back to you, and I'm going to ask, since you all are all journalists that are on here, and I'm going to ask our audience to do the same thing. So for the journalists that are on, all of you are journalists who are on here, start thinking about questions you want to ask each other, because we're going to do in the next round. You'll get a chance to ask whatever questions on your heart to somebody else who's on a guest here. But before we do that, let's hear from Ralph. Ralph, you wrote a story. You wrote 2 stories this week for the We're Still Here, Changing the Game special edition of the Afro. Oh, and I didn't tell you guys the number to call, did I? Hold tight for a minute. Cece, if we can put that up. The number is 410-554-8200, 410-554-8200. Ask for Wanda, 410-554. You got it, Cece, 8200. If not, I can post it and you're going to ask for Wanda, and I will, and she's expecting your call. I just posted it there, 410-554. There it is. She put it down the bottom. It's scrolling down the bottom. It's also at the top. And if you call her and you want this special edition that features the great writing of Alexis, Demetrius, Ralph, and Wanda, and others, $5, we'll mail it to you. But if I were you, that's not a good investment. I would do my membership for $100 and then still get, and I'm going to pay for sending you this edition if you do a membership today. All right, Ralph Moore, you wrote about the 10 Bears. I don't know how many people have heard of the 10 Bears. Talk to us about it.
The 10 Bears was a groundbreaking lacrosse team at Morgan University, Morgan State College at the time. They started in 1970, and that was at a time when there were no lacrosse teams at historically Black colleges and universities. There were Black, mostly guys, who played lacrosse in high school, whether it was at Forest Park or City, but they couldn't advance to any of the white schools because of discrimination, and so they were kind of stuck in their love of the sport. But along came a couple of people, Miles Harrison Jr. And a classmate of his, Val Emery, who approached the athletic director at Morgan, Papa Bear, and asked him if they could have a lacrosse team. And he referred them to Chip Silverman, who was a dean at the school at the time, but who had played lacrosse, even though he had never coached it. And they organized a lacrosse team. And like so many circumstances, when our folks get in the game, we end up dominating. And so that's what ended up occurring with Morgan. And they had strong teams for 10 years, and then the sport kind of disappeared. But while they were on the scene, they were in the top level competitions for that game, and they did very, very well. And one little known or little remembered fact that I wrote about was about Jim Brown, who is the former football player and movie star, quote unquote. But he holds a lacrosse record actually when he played at Syracuse University. It's never been broken in 64 years. So when people think about him as a football player and a superstar football player, he actually dominated in lacrosse when he was in college, and that's how these 10 Bears from Morgan. That's how well they did too. They dominated.
Wow.
So anyway, there's a lot of interesting facts I think that I learned that I put in the piece.
Well, that's great. And we'll come back to learn more about the 10 Bears. Again, if you're just joining us, welcome to the Afro-American newspaper. This is the Chicken Box, where you can get on the box and speak Your Truth. I'm Frances Tony Draper, CEO and publisher, and we're glad to have you hanging out with us this afternoon. Robert Gill, I see your see your question rather, and we'll go back to Wanda, see if she knows the answer to that. Right, Craig Talley comments that Jim Brown is in the College Hall of Fame for both lacrosse and football. That's a good fact to know. Welcome to everybody who's here. Come on and share this broadcast. These are great writers, and they have written wonderful stories. And Alexa says she likes to write. Alexa says she likes to write about anything around health, and so she's written a story for this week's paper for Word in Black. Let me tell you about what Word in Black is. Don't just run and sign up for their newsletter right now because it's free. But Cece, if I can find it, or if Dorothy or Dana, if you're listening, we need the link. But Word in Black is a collaboration between 10 of the leading Black newspapers in the country. You can go to wordinblack.com. I do want you to sign up for the newsletter, but the Afro gets credit if you use our link. It doesn't cost anything. But we've come together to write stories on different topics, And Alexis has been a real strong contributor for the Afro to our Word in Black, Word in Black stories. And so Alexis wrote a story about how athletic directors and coaches have had to adapt during COVID. And Alexis, I would imagine that's what's happening in Tokyo. I mean, with all these COVID cases that are happening in Japan. And tell us a little bit about the story that you wrote.
Well, this month, I decided to focus on how coaches and different decisions around sports were being made and changed, and how it was impacted by COVID. It was interesting to talk about how coaches had to innovate, and we know that the school systems have had it rough this last year and a half, switching everything on to virtual learning. And so it was interesting to speak with them. I decided to focus on the resource classes and specifically physical education classes, so it would line up with the special issue. And so I spoke with Yolanda Small, and Yolanda Small is a physical education teacher, and she's also the athletic director at Western High School in Baltimore. And so I spoke with her about how she had to innovate her classes. And one of the key takeaways, one of the main things she said was that she really had to listen to her students over this year and a half. Resource teachers, and just to be clear, when I say resource, I mean those physical education teachers, art teachers, music teachers. They had the same struggles that all of the math teachers had in this past year and a half, moving everything online. And even more so, I would say, because this was a lot, teaching a sport or trying to teach a physical education class where it's interactive, where the basis of these classes, of these resource classes, is teaching how to operate as a team. With COVID going online, it really pushed their limits, and it really gave them an opportunity to really innovate and change some things around. And so that was interesting, seeing how the coaches have had to meet those same challenges that all the other teachers have had that we focused on during this series. And so speaking with Yolanda Small, she said the first thing she had to do was just take stock of where her students were. Her students didn't want to exercise in front of a camera. And so, I know a lot of teachers face that in this past year, but when it comes to exercising and doing physical activity, I don't think that's just students. I think there are some adults who know that they would not want to exercise or do physical activity in front of their peers on a camera. And so it was interesting to see how she handled those situations, how she switched into focusing on mental health, focusing on nutrition. She said she had to listen to her students. And so if students came on and said, I'm stressed out or I can't fit into my jeans, then she knew that she could focus her classes on some mindfulness techniques. When you come into this class, yes, it's physical education, but a large part of physical education is your mental health. And so she had to add in some techniques to de-stress students. She had to listen to them. If they said, hey, I can't fit into my jeans anymore during the period where everyone's just sharing and kind of connecting, she knew that, hey, it's not working to have a whole Zumba class and force people on here to have their cameras on exercising, but you said in our share out period earlier that you couldn't fit into your jeans anymore. So how about I give some tips on how to work on your core, how to take care of those love handles and things like that. So she really went in depth with me on how she had to really change around how she thinks about the classes, how she interacts with the students, and just putting their needs first. I liked that she also added a financial piece to her classes. And so as students joined each day, as they completed assignments virtually in the physical education and health classes, there was a monetary value assigned to each test or quiz. And so she had students pick a career and a lifestyle. And then as they completed different activities for her in the physical education course, they were earning money. And so they could see like, hey, I said I was going to be, a hairdresser with 2 or 3 kids, but I made a C on that last assignment and I don't think I can afford that. And so it was interesting to see how the teachers really, my hat's off to all of the teachers who have braved this pandemic. Because they really did have to innovate. And I also spoke with Lynette Mitzel. She was a supervisor, she is the supervisor of athletics for Baltimore County Public Schools. And she spoke with me more so about how the sports teams were affected. When she got the call last year that there would be a 2-week break, so many educators, thought, okay, 2 weeks, we have 2 weeks to regroup and we'll be right back. And she was actually in Towson at a basketball game when she got that call. And she realized quickly after those 2 weeks passed that this was indefinite and that all of the sports teams and those athletes would need special care and attention as we went online. And so they had a lot of changes. They had to play a fall and a mini spring sports season all this year when they returned in January. And they did crown state champions and all of that, but they had to squeeze in both of their seasons at the beginning of this year. And for them, it looked more like telling their athletes, go run a mile and let's discuss your time, or pass against the wall for basketball, pass against the wall for a minute, and then track yourself and we can see how you're making improvements. So it was really interesting to speak with them and see how they innovated.
Well, that's great. All of us need, not just the high school folk, we all need to know about those COVID pounds.
Yes, and speak up for you.
I teased somebody, I said, it's a very serious disease and this Delta variant is no joke, but maybe, it's not COVID-19. Where are we going to put these 19 pounds? But anyway, so thanks, Alexis. I see we do have a couple of questions in the chat, but as I said earlier, these are journalists, and so they're going to ask each other a couple of questions in just a few minutes. But if you are just joining us, this is the Chicken Box, the Afro-American newspaper's live Thursday noon show where we just get on the box and we discuss certain topics. The entire month of July, we've been talking about sports in the Black community. We've been talking about players and owners and coaches, and as you've just heard, lifestyles and diets, and we've been talking about things of the past. And so if you're just joining us, we talked about the Harlem Globetrotters some, and the Morgan State University 10 Bears, and we talked about sneakers, the sneaker culture, and Alexis just finished telling us about COVID and the impact on sports as well. And I'm going to repeat this offer. If you call 410-554-8200 and you'd like a copy of this week's print edition, you cannot find it in the stores. The subscribers have it mailed to their home. We'll mail it to your house for $5, or better yet, become a subscriber, and I'll pay the $5 for the special edition, and you'll get all the rest of them starting a couple of weeks from now. All right, I'll put the journalists on the spot. Before we ask who has a question, this question is for you, Wanda, and anybody else can jump in. Robert Gill says he's asking for a friend. Y'all know how we ask for a friend, right? How many pair of sneakers does Shannon Sharpe have? Any idea?
Oh my gosh, Shannon Sharpe. I don't think Shannon Sharpe knows how many pairs of sneakers that he has. When you look at celebrities, like you go in there, they have sneakers, they have like whole rooms dedicated to their sneakers, and then they have sneakers in their garage, and they have sneakers like in storage other places. Like, they go in the stores and they spend like $10,000 on the sneakers at one point, and you see him with like 6 boxes. So like, I don't even know if Shannon Sharp knows how many pairs of sneakers he owns.
You want to take a guess? That would be a good. We could have a little contest, but we're not. You have anybody else want to take a guess? What do you think? We think, Ralph. You think he has 1,000 pair more?
I'm going to guess 1,000.
1,000. Okay. Anybody who's watching, what do you think? How many pair of sneakers does Shannon Sharp have? What do you think, Alexis?
I mean, I think that anything over 10 is a lot. So I'll probably say about 550. I'll go with 550.
550. Okay, Demetrius, are you still with us? Did we lose Demetrius? I think we lost him. He'll be back. Okay. Oh, there he is. What do you think, Demetrius? How many pair of sneakers do you think Shannon Sharp has?
Shannon Sharp.
Yes, that's the question.
Hundreds, definitely hundreds.
Okay, we don't know.
Yeah, we like Wanda was saying, it's hard to really guesstimate because this man is probably buying sneakers every week, or every month. You know what I mean? So I would say hundreds, but I couldn't put a definite number on it though.
Okay, all right. No, nobody has a definite number. All right. I don't know if whoever said it from the beginning was Wanda. We're not sure that Shannon knows how many pair of sneakers that he has. All right, so the floor is open. The floor is open for us to ask one another question. Go ahead, Ralph. What's your question?
I had a sneaker question for Wanda. Are you familiar with the controversy with the Dunbar Poets? Is it Adidas or somebody that wants to memorialize their undefeated 2 seasons in the 80s, and they haven't included the Dunbar players in that line they're putting out of sneakers, commemorative sneakers. Have you heard anything about that?
I have not. I'm sorry, I'm not aware
really?
of that.
Yeah, it's a big story in the media these days.
Okay, tell us about it, Ralph. What's the story about?
Well, the story is about that Dunbar had a powerhouse team back in the early 80s, including people like Muggsy
I do
Bogues
remember that. I do remember that team.
and others.
Mm-hmm.
And Adidas apparently wants to put out a line commemorating them, the team, but they haven't included them in terms of any of the endorsement or any of the proceeds that may come from putting out that line. So some of the players have objected to the line coming out. Maybe somebody else on the call has followed it a little more closely, but I've heard something in the wind about this controversy.
That'd be worth looking into. For those who are watching, because people are watching from all over the country and all over the world, we're talking about the Paul Laurence Dunbar High School here in Baltimore. And we have a viewer who has put up a link. Maybe we can show that link, CC. We can put that up on the screen. That there is, go to YouTube and we can take a look at the Shannon Sharp sneaker collection. I think we've all seen the collection. I don't know if it tells us how many, but thank you so much, Byron Deese, and thank you, Byron, for hanging out with us today to tell us about that sneaker collection. But thank you, Ralph, for the question about Dunbar and that controversy. Ralph, that may be worth digging into and coming up with a story on that.
Okay.
So that's good. All right, there you go. Somebody's already on it. The Baltimore boys, the Adidas, the Forum. We're full of information. That's one thing I like about, don't we love the internet? We don't always love it because it's not always accurate. So let me say that these are bona fide journalists that we have as guests today. And so they've done their homework. And so, Demetrius, do you have a question for one of your fellow journalists?
Not at the moment. You can put me. He said he's gonna put us on the spot too, and I was ready.
I did. I told you that, didn't I?
Yeah.
I have a question.
We can come back to you. Alexis said she has a question.
Okay, good.
I have a question for Wanda. So, Wanda, is there any criteria when you're looking for a sneaker? Like, is there criteria for what you will pay big money for? Like, what does a sneaker have to have for you to pay more than $110? Because I don't know. I don't get it.
So for me, I'm not the type of person who likes to have everything that everybody else has. My collection is like it's not like I don't have a lot of Jordan 1s and stuff like that. I look for something that is really distinctive. So I usually get my sneakers like off season, and it's always that rare pair that looks very different. Like my sneakers are kind of like odd colors. I love odd colors, different designs. Like I'm not a big like, oh, I'm gonna have Jordan 1s. I'm gonna have like I don't even like Yeezys. I don't understand why people like them. So I have a really eclectic bunch of sneakers, and none of them are the same. I'm a huge fan of Nike, so I have a large Nike collection. But even my Nike collection, it's not anything that you'll see anybody else walking around in. So, and I think people always say they like that. They like to have something that is exclusive, but I do find that a lot of people are like wearing a whole bunch of Jordans or whatever. So, I think I lean more to like the eclectic sneaker than anybody else.
So you like to be different and have different colors and all that. So yours are as much of a fashion statement as well. I guess they are for everybody, though, right?
Oh yeah, it's definitely a fashion statement for everybody because it's not just your sneaker; it's the whole outfit. You have to have something to go with it. You have to be coordinated from head to toe. I'm not like that. I'm a little bit more. I'm not a coordinated type of person, but I do, I do like bright colors and stuff like that.
Well, that's good. I'm laughing not at you, but at Lenore Housley's. She says she has 2 pair at about $30 each. Does that constitute a
let
collection?
Let me ask her this. How many pairs of dress shoes do you have?
Oh, here it comes back at you, Lenora Housley. How many pair of dress shoes? All right, she's counting. She'll put the number up hopefully before the show is over. She is counting. All right. Anybody else Wanda, do you have a question for one of your fellow journalists?
Does anybody remember or was anybody around to see the Harlem Globetrotters play for the Pope or have a meeting with the Pope?
How
Oh, we lost him again. They actually spent time with the Pope. My dad used to take me to Harlem Globetrotter games when we were little, and I was a big fan of theirs. And I know that they were able to, I think, I don't know if they played for the Pope, but I know that they entertained the Pope.
I think they did when he came through on his U.S. tour. So, Demetrius, that's a question for you. You have any knowledge of the Harlem Globetrotters? Wanda wanted to know when they played for the Pope.
When did they play, or when are they going to play?
Well, anything about them and the Pope.
Honestly, I haven't heard of that. I was asking Wanda, how recently did you hear about this?
It was pretty old. It was a long time ago.
Oh, really? Oh.
It wasn't recent. Yeah. Well, I don't know if they played or they just had like they met the Pope. They spent time with him. Not like the Pope that we have now, like old.
No, it was before. It was.
I think it was not this Pope, but the last Pope.
Right. Yeah.
John Paul II. I guess I had to pipe up a little bit since I'm the Catholic on the call.
Okay.
I don't fully remember that. I do remember my father loved the Harlem Globetrotters. He said they were started in 1926. He was born in 1926.
Oh wow.
But he always loved them. So we had to sit and watch them play, and watch that old trick where they get ready to throw a bucket of water on people and it's all confetti, but they were amazing ball players, and they were not only skilled, but they were great entertainers and all. So it was fun to watch them, kids and adults and all that, and they just brought a lot of energy and spirit wherever they were. There's a TV commercial on currently where there's a group of I don't know whether they're the real Harlem Globetrotters, but they're helping people move. Anybody seen that?
I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that.
They're tossing around moving boxes, and the family's looking all discouraged because they're tossing around boxes of dishes.
I saw that.
Right.
I saw that. Listen, the Harlem Globetrotters played for Pope Francis when he came through in
Oh,
20.
really?
Right. And I've also seen the Harlem Globetrotters. You all know they've been around a long time. So different players. I mean, they're different people who make up the team, right?
Yeah,
For Harlem
I remember
Globetrotters.
when they had their first woman, Lynette Woodard. We went to see her play, and she was
Right.
really like she held her own too.
Right, she
Right.
did. I remember seeing her play. Listen, if you're just tuning in, this is the Afro American Newspapers Chicken Box, and somebody might be watching. I don't think this is the case, and you don't know who we are. The Afro was founded in 1892 by my great grandfather when reportedly, John H. Murphy Sr., when reportedly less than 2% of African Americans could read. It was started right here in Baltimore, Maryland. And now, as you all know, the journalists know, we're not just a newspaper. We still do a legacy edition. And for things like this special sports edition, I'm telling you, you can read it online, but it's nothing like seeing all those sports stories together in one edition. If you'd like to get a copy of that, call 410 right now. I mean, I sound like a television commercial, right? 410-554-8200, 410-554-8200. And Miss Wanda, that's what we call her, she is ready to take your order for the special edition. Now, I'm not saying this as a commercial. We really do only have a limited amount of those special editions. We didn't order a whole lot of them because they get mailed to all of our subscribers. And so I apologize now if they're gone. Robert Gill, I don't know if we know the history of Chuck Taylor's, Spalding, Pumas, and Nike. But I mean, I can throw that out there if anybody knows the history of those sneakers. I don't think we do, but all of us would do probably the same thing with research it. Go
Chuck
ahead.
Taylors were like the first basketball sneakers. That was the first basketball sneaker, and I don't know what year it came out, but I know that before, like in the 70s and 80s, that was like a really big shoe, and people people still collect them. Chuck Taylor's, Converses, and Pumas came along, I feel like in the 80s, but they weren't like the dominant shoe. They were sort of like a low level shoe. People didn't really wear them a lot, but now they sort of like, gained a resurgence, and a lot of people are wearing them now because they've got like a lot more colors and designs and stuff like that. So.
Okay. All right. Well, I also wrote something for this edition, so I'm going to chime in on what I wrote. I really wrote about the fact that we have a lot of us, when I say us African Americans, on the courts, on the fields, right? Not so much in baseball, so that's one thing. But we don't have enough of us in the front offices, not enough of us in the coaching, coaching areas, or trainers or broadcasters for that. For example, and so, and we don't have enough of us there at all. And so I want to talk to you, Demetrius, Alexis, Wanda, Ralph. Let's weigh in. It's one thing to be the player, and Ralph and I are old enough to remember when we didn't have a lot of players, as many players either, right? It wasn't nearly NBA now is really dominated by African American players. Last week we talked about the fact that the MLB has Black and brown people there, but most of them are not native born in the United States, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Baseball.
Right.
Football, we dominate. We're just starting to have many more quarterbacks. But when you talk about owners, though, and coaches and trainers and broadcasters, front office personnel, I mean, Ozzie Newsome, yeah, he broke through and he was there, but there are not a whole lot of Ozzie, and of course he's not there now, but there are not a whole lot of Ozzie Newsomes. And so that's what I wrote about. Anybody want to talk about that a little bit? About the economics of sports?
One of the thoughts that occurred to me, when I was a kid, speaking of my father again, because he was very much into sports, when we would watch the All-Star game, and there used to be 2 All-Star games in baseball years ago. Yep. He used to say to me, root for the National League, son. They got more Negro ball players. And that was the beginning of some race consciousness for me. Sports and race have always been connected and all. But the fact of the matter is that in Major League Baseball, there aren't but so many Black ball players. And the numbers have never gotten, I think in the 70s, they got to their peak and they've gone back down again. When I was a kid, it was fun to watch the Orioles and watch Frank Robinson, watch Paul Blair,
Ken
watch a
Griffey
number
Jr.
of who?
Ken Griffey Jr.
Ken Griffey Jr.
Oh yeah. I was just speaking of the Orioles, but yeah, but all around the league to see some great stars. Now, in terms of football, we know that Colin Kaepernick, because of his protest, which the society is caught up with now and is supporting, has been locked out of getting a job because the owners, an all-white set of owners, have refused to admit that they were wrong and to apologize to him and to let him be hired. And I mentioned that in passing in one of the pieces I wrote this week.
Right.
That's a reality.
Yeah, that is a reality. And, it was too little too late when the apology did come for Kaepernick, So, yeah, there's a lot on that.
That came from Roger, whatever his name is, the commissioner. The owners didn't pipe up themselves. And the best apology they could have given him would have been to let him be hired. He still got playing years left. But he did get a nice deal from Nike. So.
Yeah,
he wanted to make an example out of him.
Well, yeah. That's another whole thing. But you're right. He was really disrespected for taking a knee,
right,
in protest of what's happening, and that's all. That's pre-George Floyd. I mean, so people use George Floyd as like a mark in the sand, but things are happening pre-George Floyd, and they're still happening, and the disparities in ownership and other top level jobs in sports, we don't say enough about it. I mean, the great Sam Lacey that wrote for the Afro for years, his thing was on baseball, front office. And this is a little trivia. Sam Lacey could not write journalists. He could not write from inside of the press box. He was not allowed. And when they did that Jackie Robinson movie, Sam Lacey deserved to be a part of that. He could not. So he had to write. Can you all imagine writing from on top of the dugout? He could not go into the press box. Yeah. And to their credit, some of the white journalists climbed up there with him.
Wow.
To cover the story.
Yeah. It was shameful how he was not really given any treatment during that film 42.
Right.
About Jackie Robinson. And yet, he was out there covering.
Yep. He was covering
more and better than anybody.
And really. Sam Lacey told me personally, he said Jackie Robinson was not the best black player at the time.
Right. Well, and some people say it was more because of his temperament that
that's what Sam Lacey
could handle. Because they said the fans in Baltimore were some of the worst fans in terms of treating black ball players as they came through. They were nasty and ugly to them. But there are people like Josh Gibson who had a batting average of well over 400 and some. And I've got my bobblehead of Satchel Paige, who was one of the all-time great pitchers in baseball.
Correct.
And they just admitted their statistics to Major League Baseball. They were kept out systematically because they dominated. And it's always been the dominance that they fear. And so they pretended that they didn't exist. The Negro League players. So.
That is so true. Listen, if you're just joining us, this is the Afro-American Newspapers Chicken Box, and today we have four of our outstanding Afro journalists on the Chicken Box, and each of them has contributed a story to this week's special edition entitled "We're Still Here, Changing the Game." And so if you're just joining us, we're just having this dialogue. Y'all know how the Chicken Box goes. And so thank you to those who are hanging out with us still. Walter Neal, I see you. Robert Gill, you're still there. Oh, Lenora answered that question, Wanda. She said that she has, like Shannon Sharp, she doesn't even think she knows know how many pair of dress shoes she has. She said she had too many. Byron Deese is still hanging out with us. So thank you for those who are hanging out on the chicken box. And so we're almost out of time. And so I just wanted to ask Alexis or Demetrius or Wanda and Ralph, are there any more questions that you have for each other about sports, or even to our viewers on today? Anybody have a question? Okay, there's a question from Robert Gill on Howard University soccer championship program during the 70s. Anybody have any insight on that? I think, Brother Gill, that for all of those questions, those would be things we would have to research in order to do it, but those are good things to look into as well. Any questions for each other, though, before we wind up our conversation for today?
I had a general question. I know I'm talking too much, but it's interesting that they're not going to have any fans in the stands at the Olympics. And I just wonder how that impacts performances. How somebody who has trained all their lives, it's a very focused lifestyle that these people live. I mean, they live for those few minutes when they compete for their medals, and then they go through some emotional changes sometimes, and we saw that with a couple of Olympians, right?
Right, and we've seen that with Olympians. We've seen that with athletes in general. We have a story in this week's special edition on mental health and athletes. We know that is a big issue across the board, and Naomi Osaka spoke out about it when she withdrew from the U.S. Open, and so that's a good question. Anybody want to weigh in? What do you think the psychological impact of no fans in the stands? I'm not trying to make things rhyme. It just came out like that.
I think not having fans there definitely impacts the energy. I know a lot of athletes, they feed off that energy, off of having the fans there, having everybody just in one central location rooting for you. And so I think it will definitely not necessarily impact performance, but I think it would impact their feeling about the day. You win an Olympic gold and you're on top and there's no one there, to cheer you on. So I can only imagine that it will impact them psychologically, but I don't think it would impact performance unless you're one of those people who work well under pressure, work better under pressure, and you need people booing you to prove a point, and get yourself worked up. But I think it is the smart decision. I've been following, athlete after athlete coming up positive, and my heart goes out to them because I know that they train so hard for this event that only comes around once, every 4 years. And so it's like you're training, this is the goal, and then you get there and you test positive. Personally, I feel like it could have been postponed because right. I don't think how they, rationalize pulling people from all over the world into one central location. So, people need their sports, I guess. I won't get on my chicken box. People need their sports.
Well, listen, I'm going to ask you in a few minutes to get on the box. I'm going to ask everybody to get 30 seconds on the box and just a few minutes. But thank you, Alexis. That's great insight there. Anybody else about the Olympics? And Ralph's question about, Alexis brought up another question. Ralph's question about performance without fans, right? And another thing about whether or not the Olympics should or should not have been, they weren't canceled. Demetrius, you have a perspective?
What was the point that Ralph brought out? I'm sorry, I keep going.
Ralph brought out the point of how the Olympians may or may not perform without any spectators in the stands, and then Alexis brought out the point about it should have been canceled just because of all the COVID and because there are no fans and because Tokyo is going to lose a whole bunch of money.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, Ralph. Go ahead.
No.
No. This is for you, Demetrius. How do you think the athletes perform Do you think they perform the same way if they have spectators or not?
No, they since they're world class, top tier athletes, they're still going to put on, they're going to put on, awe inspiring performances, but it won't be the same. Like a good example, for instance, with the NBA, as Alexis was saying, the atmosphere was totally different. With like, if anyone watched the NBA playoffs and NBA finals, most arenas went back to half capacity, or some of them seemed like they were full capacity, and just having the energy of the crowd seems to enhance the performance of the athletes, because it's like they play to entertain the fans. When you look at sports is really entertainment. So they play to win essentially, but also they play to entertain the fans and give them what they want. And we've seen that in boxing as well. I follow boxing. There was a time where there was no fans in attendance, and now you have different arenas and stadiums and things like that where fans are allowed back, and you just see the difference in the performance and the energy of the athletes. So I think it'll still be entertaining, but it won't be the same.
Thank you. Thank you. Those are good points. Wanda, you want to weigh on that question? And then I want everybody to think about your 30 seconds. We've got a couple of minutes and we're going to be closing out, and you'll have 30 seconds to be on the box in just a minute. In fact, Wanda, if you want, go on and weigh in on this question, and we're going to circle back around to everybody. Anything you want to say about this one?
I just feel like with everything that's going on, like this whole world is sort of turned upside down and everybody's trying to figure out how to navigate it. It's just a really complicated situation. So, everybody has to do their best to, figure it out the best way they can, It's an adjustment for all of us.
Well, it is an adjustment, but as I think we said, athletes do thrive on the fans, right? It is entertainment. All right, we are at the end of the Chicken Box. Thank you to all of our guests. Here's the way we always close out a Chicken Box. You have 30 seconds, just 30 seconds, uninterrupted, to be on the box. And so the clock is ticking. Ralph, you get the first 30 seconds. Alexis, you get the second 30 seconds. Demetrius, you get the third 30 seconds. Wanda, you get the fourth 30 seconds. I'll do my 30 seconds at the end, and then we should be at the end of the hour. All right, Alexis, here are your 30 seconds on the box.
All right. So I would say first is good luck to all of the Olympians who are representing for all of the different cultures in Tokyo right now. So good luck on that. But I will say that when I think of Black athletes, I think of our best and our brightest across many different fields. Yes, they're on the playing field, but I think that our athletes are the people who humanize us to other cultures. They idolize our Black athletes, so they have power. And just a note back to what Dr. Draper was saying, I think that it's about time, it's past time that we ask our athletes to use that power to get at the front office, to have more ownership and more say across all of the major sports leagues. So also, I think, I know we haven't touched on this, but I really want the Black community to think about the age at which we start putting our young people in contact sports. I think that that's something that really, really bothers me when I see our best and our brightest end up with CTE, bodies broken down at the end of a career and have nothing to show for it. So I know that people are going to have their sports, but I think I would like to see our Black community consider the age at which we put young people into contact sports that affect brain development.
Thank you so much. That's another whole chicken box.
A whole nother chicken box.
Glad to have you back. Okay, Ralph Moore, 30 seconds on the box.
All right, my chicken box, and I'm getting hungry. Is the thrill of my lifetime was to meet Muhammad Ali in the airport in Chicago many years ago. I was coming back from a community organizing training, and he was coming back from Russia, and he was a great influence in terms of his position against the war in Vietnam. So I was very impressed by that. Secondly, I am totally fascinated and pleased with LeBron James. You see in the news the other day that he put up $41 million, I believe,
You
for
got 10
college
seconds.
scholarships.
You got 10 seconds.
And so that's amazing. The last thing is that there were a bunch of women who did a broadcast of a baseball game recently. All of them were white. And it's time that they need to learn about diversity.
That's great. Thank you so much. Demetrius, 30 seconds on the box.
Okay, just first want to say thank you for this opportunity. I love the title or the theme of our issue, Changing the Game. Black athletes, Black people in general, we are indeed game changers. The world of sports wouldn't be what it is without us. Our influence is unmatched, and I would just encourage, those inspiring athletes, think farther than just a professional career. Think how can you enter the executive ranks? How can you be the next Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Floyd Mayweather and others. So thank you all for this opportunity.
Thank you so much. Wanda, 30 seconds on the box. The nice thing about the chicken box is we're not like network TV. You don't get cut off in the hour. So I know we're a couple of minutes over. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. Okay, Wanda.
I'm gonna piggyback on what Demetrius said, that we are influencers. We've always been people who come in and dominate a field. I think that my hope is that we continue to like grow in our pride and our strength and sense of ourselves, and begin to aspire to be on the executive boards, and continue to take our power as trendsetters and make that work for our community.
Wow, thank you. That was exactly 30 seconds. So I'm gonna try to do mine, and before my 30 seconds hasn't started yet, I want to thank each of you for joining us today. Thank you for the incredible work that you do for the Afro-American newspapers. And I know some of you write outside of the Afro. Thank you so much. We're going to post the link that we said for the newsletter for Word in Black, a free sign up. It's there on your screen. I want to thank Shavilia, I probably messed your name up, but thank you for hanging with us, and Chippy and Harris and Tina and Diane and Rachel and Ray and VL McGee and Edith and Kim and Robert and Maddie and Jewel. And if I missed your name, y'all know how it's like someplace you start calling people's names. But thank you all. If I miss it, please accept my apologies. But thank you for being on the box. Okay, so now here comes my 30 seconds. I want to give a tribute to my cousin who went home to be with the Lord yesterday, the late, great Stan McKenzie, who played for the NBA, for the Phoenix Suns, who died on yesterday morning, the husband of my cousin, Bishop Vashti McKenzie. Nobody's broken Stan's free throw record yet, and that record is like over 30 years or 40 years old. He used to play for the Baltimore Bullets. So rest in power and in peace, Stan the Man McKenzie. And so we honor your life on the court, but most of all, we honor your life off of the court as you and Bishop served as Bishop and Episcopal Supervisor for the AME Church for the last 21 years until she retired just a couple of weeks ago. So that's it. Again, I'm Frances Tony Draper. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today on the Chicken Box. God bless you, and see everyone next week. Next month's subject is education. So we're going to be talking about education, Alexis, right up your alley. So we've had to get you right back on. All right, goodbye, everybody. Thanks, CC, for helping us out in the back office on today. All righty. Thank you.